Hi, I'm Tara Lynn of Geek Saga Entertainment, here with my co-host Manny of the wow. Let me try that again. I haven't done a live in so long. Wow, we're doing it. We're doing it live, guys.
Do it in live. Fuck it. We're doing
Wow.
it live.
Hi, I'm Tara Lynn of Geek Saga Entertainment, here with my co-host Manny for the brand new Geek Saga Show series, The Media That Made Us. This series will focus on media that the two of us consumed in our younger, or maybe even just slightly younger years, media that helped shape our current interests and that we still love.
Yeah, it was over 20 years ago, just BTW.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, I'm just gonna put that out there. Anyways, I'm Manny, and I'm here to announce that we're kicking off this series with our coverage of sci-fi channels. Oh, excuse me, SyFy. SYFY. I really did not like their rebrand, honestly. I was like, why did you have to like kitty it up a bit? You know, like, bro, what's like, it's like, does sci-fi channel sound boring?
I think they
Anyways,
changed it back at some point too, but I don't have like network cable or anything
yeah,
anymore. So
I remember when they
anyway.
changed it. I didn't like it. Anyways, so we're getting into the reimagined Battlestar Galactica series. And our first episode was, of course, all about the BSG miniseries that aired in 2003.
Before we get started, just a heads up that you can follow me and therefore all of the Geek Saga endeavors at a Geek Saga on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube.
And you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Manissimo Art.
Last but hopefully not least, we hope that you'll check out the Geek Saga Entertainment Patreon. We have a bunch of tiers starting as low as $1 a month, and it's a great way to support us and receive some fun perks in return, including including early access to the podcast episodes of this series, as well as our 90s and Noughties Cringe Factor series, and the very soon coming back Hot D Takes series.
So excited.
You can check it out at patreon.com/geeksaga_entertainment.
As I mentioned, the BSG miniseries, which was a reimagining of Battlestar Galactica's TV series that came out in 1978, first aired on SyFy Channel in 2003, December to be exact. It was obviously meant to usher in the new BSG TV series, which premiered in October 2004. But we'll get into that in the future.
Right, because in this episode, we're just talking about the miniseries. And our format for our Media That Made Us series will include our top 5 moments that made it in each episode, which are basically our hot takes from the portion of the series that we're covering, followed by any insights we've uncovered from rewatches. Wow. Followed by any insights we've uncovered from rewatches and or being longtime fans. But first, let's address how and when we got into Battlestar Galactica. Why don't you go first, Manny?
So I got into Battlestar Galactica when I was young, right? But obviously the old Battlestar series was very different than this one. But you know, and I got into it when I mean, I was like young, so it had already been out for a bit because I probably watched it like in 82 or 83. And I was like, because the original series came out like a year after I was born. So I was too young to really understand what it was. But it went along with that Star Wars hype train, when they did Star Wars and they wanted to make something to kind of compare it to. So that's when I got into it. Do I remember much of it? No, I don't. I was way too young. I tried rewatching it when I was older, and unfortunately this series completely ruined that for me. So I just couldn't get into that style of it, I guess.
The original one, you mean? Yeah, I tried. This is kind of jumping forward in time a little bit, but after I started watching this reimagined BSG, I tried watching some of the original BSG, and well, no, I think I got through 2, maybe 3 episodes. I just couldn't do it.
I can see for the time where it was good, right? Because it was like the television Star Wars killer, right? Because it was like, oh, we get to watch this every week, not just once every 3 years, But
Yeah. No, I get that, but so okay, so when you started watching this, did you start watching it like right when the miniseries aired? Did you catch up with it later?
No, I watched this right as it aired because I heard that they were redoing it, and fortunately in that time I wasn't so jaded about remakes, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, no, it's awesome," and I saw it, and I saw the people in it, and it had Edward James Olmos in it, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is gonna be fantastic," like, it has to be good. There's no way that this can't be good, and and I sat down for I think they had split it up, I think is what they did. I think they did
Yeah.
2 parts, and, I was hooked, man. Like, I'll say this, I was hooked after a while. At first, it was kinda like, "What are you guys doing here?"
Mm.
It was a little slow, but, man, once that took off, lifetime fan, easily.
Yeah, so I had no idea this was a thing that was happening, but also I December 2003, I was still in college when this first aired, and I did not have there was a period of time where I did not have cable, and there was also a period of time where I did not have my own television. It was like I know I had cable in college, but then I didn't for a while. Then I didn't have my own television for a while. Then I didn't have cable again for a while. It's a whole series of things that happened. But um, living on your own and money and stuff like that. What's the first thing you cut? Well, not internet, cable, but
Mhm.
they didn't have streaming services back then the way
Nope.
they do now, or even TiVo, really.
Nope,
Like, but
yep.
not that that mattered because I didn't have cable. So I first heard about the series. I had been going back to Orlando and staying with some friends who lived there on a regular basis. Like I was a seasonal worker at Disney. So during college breaks and stuff, I would go back and stay with them sometimes for a week or 10 days at a time, sometimes longer. I think one time I stayed with them for like a month maybe. But when it was airing, like, and not the main show, this was well after the miniseries. But when the main show was airing, they would always, it was a bunch of dudes living together. And I'm pretty sure everyone that lived there, or maybe all but one of the guys, were fans of the show. So they would all go, like, they would all sit together on Friday nights as long as they weren't working and watch the new episode of Battlestar Galactica. So I sat with them when they watched a couple episodes, like spread out too over like a couple years time. And I didn't really pay attention because obviously this is like partway through the series at this point. I'm talking like 2004, 2005, I think,
Mhm.
2 years that I was visiting them kind of regularly. So, and not always when it was airing. So I didn't actually start watching it until 2008, I think. So like toward the end, and it was before it finished airing. I want to say before the last season started, but I didn't like I started with 33 season
Mm.
1, episode 1, because I didn't know that there was a miniseries that introduced the whole thing. So, yeah, when I actually finally first started watching this show, sometime before the last season aired, I jumped right in with that episode and was totally lost because of it, 'cause there's a lot that happens in this miniseries
Oh,
that
yeah.
and if you just jump in with 33, it's like it's not like you can't follow it at all, but there's definitely stuff going on that is just kind of nonsensical if you didn't
Yep.
watch the miniseries. And yeah, so it was a little bit of a mess at first. I mean, I was absolutely, in love with it from the first episode because you jump right into all that action and all that
Mhm.
drama and just that tense, like, edge of your chair feeling that we'll get into when we talk about the first season. But
Mhm.
yeah, then I went back and watched the miniseries and I was like, "Holy shit, there's a lot I missed." Like, I don't know, I didn't know Boomer was a fucking Cylon for, like, a while, and I didn't know that that was a thing that they introduced at the very end of the miniseries until, of course, I watched the miniseries, which was I think I might have finished the entire first season before I watched the miniseries because it was, like, at that point, I realized that there was a miniseries, like, intro,
Mhm.
maybe partway through watching the first season, and I was like, I'm just gonna finish the first season, then I'll go back and watch the miniseries." So, yeah, the
Mhm.
I don't remember exactly when people start figuring out or finding out that Boomer was a Cylon,
Mhm.
'cause I haven't rewatched the full series in a few years, but
Mhm.
yeah, I had no idea Boomer was a Cylon for,
Yep.
like, that whole first season or whatever until they start revealing it in the show itself. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it was a very interesting journey, but, I mean, I've rewatched it several times since then. Obviously, I always start with the miniseries now.
You have to, because I mean, the miniseries really sets the stage and the tone, for the entire show. And I think that's what I like so much about it. Is that's
Yeah.
why it's like I couldn't imagine walking into the first episode without watching the. But you're right, it absolutely would suck you in regardless
Well, and
because
I honestly almost wonder if it sucked me in faster
yeah.
because I jumped into it the way I did.
Well, yeah, because you just want information at that point.
Yep.
You're like, I just want to know more.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. I'm pretty sure I watched like at least the first 3 seasons over the course of like a week or something.
Yeah.
It's like I had no life other than going to work, coming home, and watching Battlestar.
And watching Battlestar. But look, in your defense, man, Battlestar does that to you. When you get into it, it's like you have to keep watching. You have to keep watching because it's like, what happens next? What happens next? And they keep setting things up. Anyways, not to get too off track because we'll be talking about all the other seasons.
Yeah. So want to get started with our
Yes, we're gonna
moments?
get started with our top 5 moments that made it.
And again, these are specific to the mini series. So, starting with number 1, the entire concept of how and why an essentially fully crewed Battlestar survives the Cylon attack. Really, though, has anyone ever questioned that all those people were there for a decommissioning ceremony, that the Galactica survived the Cylon attack and was therefore still around to fight back and attempt to preserve the human race? No, nobody's questioned it because it was handled perfectly and just makes sense.
Yep, it made perfect sense. That's why they're all there. That's why there's a bunch of people you don't recognize there. It was different, yeah, it was really good. For me, it was the concept of the, antiquated technology, throughout this miniseries that is really what saves them. And I think it kind of falls into line with that saying, where it talks about, when you over specialize, you breed in weakness, because you become so dependent and so complacent on some of these things that, in the end, you don't know how to live without them. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that was like the biggest downfall, for the colonial fleet, really, right? Because they wanted more convenience and they wanted more like that. And the fact that, like, the commander, of the Galactica, he was an older guy, he wasn't into all this hip technology stuff. And he's like, and he lived through like that war, through like the first war, and he understood what their weaknesses were. And, so I thought that was like, I don't know. It was really cool, and I really love the whole feel of like everything that's going on there, right? So when I talk about like how it was kind of slow at first when I first watched it, like I didn't give up because I really felt like it was like it's setting something up here. And I think the thing that they really did was they gave you that feel that it almost seemed like the last episode of a show, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like everything's winding down, everybody's like shaking each other's hands, like, hey, I'll see you on the next whatever, or it was an honor to serve with you, and like all these things. And I don't know, and I think it was great. And then I think it also played into the whole like lax mentality that they had for their military, like, tradition or whatever you'd call it, right? Like there wasn't a lot of formalities. People were getting away with murder. They're just doing all these things, and everybody's just like, oh yeah, it's just whatever. Because I think that kind of set up to what was going on. Like this was like, even though a lot of these people on the ship were young, they weren't necessarily like retiring, but the Galactica was retiring. So it was like, all right, whatever. And I did like a lot of the like, the remarks about it becoming like a museum, and they're just like can you imagine something that that you cared about, that,
and there was a gift shop and everything.
Gift shop. Like I try to think about that, like if I built my own house and it was amazing and I loved it and I lived in it for 50 years, and then it like all of a sudden there's a gift shop and they're turning it into this like museum, I'd be like, oh my god, like what are you talking about, So yeah,
the gift shop thing just kills me because it was very like Disney-fied, which of course they don't have Disney in this universe.
No.
But yeah, there's got to be a gift shop, and a museum, I guess. This whole ship is just a museum.
No, exactly.
And also, it's very much like they were doing this because they had this hope for the future. Oh, we can finally do this because we don't necessarily need these battle stars now that the Cylon War is over and done, et cetera, et cetera. Only it's not.
Little did they know.
Yeah. So what about number 2, eh?
So piggybacking on how well they set up the Galactica survival, the miniseries also works to set up a lot of future plots and themes without its doing so seem forced. Oh, with without its doing so seeming forced or awkward. Like they really kind of laid this down
Mhm.
very gently, where it's like, but I honestly think that they kind of did that because they didn't know, like they didn't want to leave things like with like a cliffhanger style,
Oh, for sure.
plot B thing, because they're like, look, we don't know if people are even going to accept this. Maybe they'll just say, okay, the miniseries sucked. We'll never get the television show made. So they didn't want to leave it. I felt like it was like the screenwriters just doing a good job of leaving things kind of like, we could talk about this or we won't talk about this.
I feel like they probably knew they were at least gonna get a season 1 just because of the timing, like, season 1 aired less than a year, about 10
Mhm,
months after the miniseries aired, but I mean, really, for sure, they did not know, where all of the storylines were gonna go.
mhm,
They were, in a sense, throwing some stuff at a wall and seeing
mhm,
what stuck, and not just in terms of whether or not people would like it, but whether or not it would further the story that they wanted to tell.
mhm,
And so some of the future plots and themes that it set up, whether or not they were carried through, were um Kara confessing to Lee that
mhm.
she was essentially responsible for his brother's death, and that sets up an entire story arc that,
Oh,
of
yeah.
course, includes Adama eventually as well.
And it's like a two-part episode too in season 1. Like
Yeah.
that was like a big one, yeah.
Yeah, and then Adama's bit about how they need to start making babies, which signifies his realization that the war, such as it is or was, is over, and he needs to focus on protecting the people who are left.
Yep.
Then we have Ty, and this is a really tough one, but Ty ordering Chief to close that bulkhead because of the fire
Mhm.
um, during or after the attack, and this resulting in the deaths of so many crew members. And of course, Chief is like a mess about it, and Ty, even being Ty, like he knows he has to make this decision, but nobody wants this to have to happen.
Yep.
It's very difficult, but this also foreshadows the many times they will have to sacrifice the few to protect the many.
Yep.
I mean, that's a theme in
That
this
is a
show
theme from
over and
start to
over and
finish, yeah.
over again.
Yep.
Conversely, though, the combination of Boomer's relationship with Chief and then also her bonding with that little kid, Boxy,
Mhm,
that was supposed to set up a future family dynamic between the
mhm.
three of them, which is a plot that we, of course, know was abandoned.
Yep.
But I mean, I at least never felt the loss of or heard any complaints about them abandoning it. I don't know if have you ever read, there's 3 like novellas or short novels that were published. I can't remember which one of the 3
Mhm.
is, like, Unity was one, maybe, or Sagittarius is Bleeding. There were 3 of them, whatever. I can't remember the names off the top of my head, but one of them has Boxy in it as kind of a big character, and I
Hmm.
think at the end they, like, turn him into a Cylon or something. It's been a while since I
Mm.
read them, but it was really weird because those were written before a lot of other plot holes, like, were filled in, and maybe I think it was after they decided they weren't gonna do this, Chief Boomer Boxy, like, family thing, but
Mm.
he was maybe, he was definitely meant to be a bigger character, the kid was. I'm all here for the fact that he wasn't, not, because kids in TV shows like this, it's like kids in The Walking Dead, man, just don't.
No, exactly, and when it comes to this, like the miniseries is literally just it's the free sample you get from, like, your Coke dealer where he's like, "Oh, you should just try this," and then you're like, "Oh, this was cool," and then you, like, start doing it, and then your life becomes a complete train wreck. Like, that's what this so when you watch the miniseries, no matter how bad or uncomfortable you feel, just get ready because it's gonna get a lot worse.
Just you wait, there's more.
And it's literally like that from start to end of the entire series. I mean, there is a lot of uncomfortable situations that happen here.
Oh yeah, God, don't even get me started. I'll get into this way more in future episodes, but the Six and Baltar stuff makes me so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Just like having this essentially the way it's kind of portrayed, like imaginary friend that
Yep.
you're like having physical relations with, and people walk in on you all the time and stuff. Like, my God.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Anyway, not to get too off topic, but yeah, so this it just does such a good job of setting up first with the Galactica's survival, the how and why of it surviving, and then also all of these future plots and themes, whether or not they came to fruition, again, because I don't think anybody really necessarily felt the loss of a lot of these things
Yeah.
that did not come to fruition. So moving on to something a little more specific, uh, the gender neutral bathrooms and all of the ranking members of the military being addressed as sir. So ahead of its time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I loved it. And the thing I loved the most about it is that it wasn't ever mentioned or discussed in the show. It was just, yeah, we used like the same bathroom. Like, what's the problem? Like, well,
Yeah.
yes, everybody is sir, right? Regardless of gender. I think that's fantastic, and I loved how just it was just portrayed as just like, oh, okay, this is how it is. And you as the watcher, you're like, cool, all right, that's it, you know. But yeah, definitely ahead of its time. It didn't really like, because a lot of the women, on, BSG also is they're powerful women,
Mhm.
and but you don't really like. I have a hard time saying, oh well, that's a woman, right? Because their characters are so developed, you get to know them so much that you just kind of don't really think about those things anymore. And you're right, everyone using the same bathroom will easily put everyone on a equal playing field there, I guess.
Yeah, when Billy, Rosalind's aide walks
Mhm.
walks into the bathroom and is like, "Whoa!" So it's clearly not a thing that is happening in society as a whole, but
Yep.
in the military, it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
we're like all on and also we're all on a ship too.
Yep.
This isn't like a base built out on a bunch of land where there's all this room or whatever. This is a
Hmm.
ship. We have so much room. Guess what? There's one bathroom for everybody.
Hmm.
But yeah, in real life, the first time I saw a gender neutral bathroom in person was like 2016, and that was super rare even in 2016.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and also just the sir, everybody being called sir. It's not gendered either,
Hmm.
right? Like it's not about, oh, we're going to refer to everyone as sir. At least as far as I know, it's not about them being referred to as sir because, like, let's go with the masculine. It's just like
Hmm.
we're all on the same level.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's the way I saw it.
very ahead of its time, and I loved it when I first started watching this 15, 16, 17 years ago, and I will never not love it, even though things like this are more common now. It's just proves how amazing and ahead of its time this
Yeah, I
show
mean, because you're
was.
talking 21 years ago, and it was
Yeah.
just it was great. All right, number 4. Rosalind finding out that she's now the president.
Ah!
I really like this, because I couldn't imagine being in a position like that, like that she's just kind of like next in line. It's almost like she became president off of like a technicality, right?
Oh,
It's like,
no, for sure. She's like 43rd in line.
yeah, and it's just like, well, there just happened to be like a nuclear war. So the fact that they even tried to like keep some type of quorum with that, where it's like, okay, it shows that they're trying to hold on to, their order, right? Of what they were. We're not going to let the enemy do it. This is how we do things. So I thought it was great, and it was kind of funny at first because you can tell people were just kind of like brushing her off, even the commander, with like Lee, he's like, you're taking orders from a school teacher, like just kind of like blew it off because his mindset is already like in the war mindset, right? Like, we're
Mhm.
going to do this, you know, but for her character, it worked really well, right? Because, she is really good in the show, right? And she does kind of take command, and you can tell she's nerve wracked and she's kind of like a disaster or whatever. But I think that, like, like it's like that saying that is, overused, that people, what is it like? I can't remember it now, dude. Like great leaders don't seek power, right?
Yeah.
But it's like thrust upon them.
Yep.
And that's the way she is, And with her being like the head of ministry or school or Ministry of Academics or whatever, like, oh, it makes a lot of sense. She probably deals with a lot of bratty kids all the time. So this is kind of like right up her
Yeah.
alley,
Yeah.
And and I loved it also because, she's just not like she's not coming from like a position of like the typical political shit. She's way more pragmatic about stuff, which is what I liked about it. Because if you would have had some typical politician in there, it would have been the same bullshit. They would have fed some crap and sat back and did nothing the entire time. But the actress who plays the president, Mary McDonnell, she's fantastic. Number one, like she's just great. I love her, like in everything. But she has a very comforting thing about her, So it's
well,
like
maybe not. What was she in recently? The Edgar Allan Poe show, I think, on
oh, you're talking about what is it called?
Netflix. Oh my God, I'm blanking on what it's called, and I freaking loved it too.
It's the same guy who did
Yeah. Hold on, I'm looking.
the Haunting of Hill House and
I'm
what was
looking
it
it up.
called?
I'm
House
looking it up.
Usher, something that
Oh, the fall, yeah, the Fall of the House of. I was trying to remember which story of his it was actually named after because it covers so many of his stories. But yeah, the Fall of the House of the Fall of the House of Usher. I would not call her
I haven't seen it yet.
any
So
of these
yeah.
positive things in that show. I mean, she's amazing in it,
Of
but
course.
anyway,
Yeah.
off topic.
Off topic, but yeah, no. But yeah, of course, Well, then she's just a good actress then. Let's just
Oh,
say
she's
that,
amazing.
So, but there's something that is like her character is somebody who I feel like I can run to with like the most like minuscule problem and like cry on her shoulder, and she would comfort me and then like with the same tongue kind of like direct me and tell me what to do and I would listen to her because she has this commanding presence like about her. Like there's something
Yeah.
about her, to
Despite
where
how soft spoken she is too,
yeah, like
right?
yeah, exactly. Because she's very soft spoken and you can tell she's all nervous and shaky and like, oh my God, but she kind of like takes charge, and I think they did a great job with that, And what I love about her having her moments in the show where she's kind of like, when she's getting sworn in and you can see her hand and she's visibly shaking and like all this stuff, like to me, it's like, okay, she's vulnerable,
Yeah.
And that just makes her relatable,
Yep.
because too often do we get characters on television shows that are just kind of like, omnipotent. They're like, oh my God, look at how powerful and how strong. And like the quickest way to get me to not like a television show or not like a character is have zero vulnerability. Zero vulnerability. At that point, I don't care anymore because I can't relate to it,
Yeah. And I mean, I want to just say with all of the media I have consumed, including having watched the series more times than I can recall at this point, it's definitely upwards of 5. I have to say that the scene where Rosalind finds out she's the president has always just stuck with me as being such a moving and powerful and unforgettable scene, despite the fact that I did not watch the miniseries before I jumped into the show. Going back and watching it and seeing this, it almost felt it made me feel like this and the next thing we're going to talk about more than anything made me feel like I missed out. Not the reveals that we get, right? Like not the reveals of who is a Cylon, not I don't even all the god crap from 6. Don't even like that's something I like tossed around talking about and
Culty
kind of
stuff.
I want to push that into future seasons.
Yeah.
But all of the things that we get in this miniseries, which 3-ish hours long, 3.5 hours long,
Yeah.
something like
3.5
that.
hours.
And even with, again, the thing I'm going to mention next, this is probably the scene that has stuck with me the most. And some of that may be, as a femme presenting person, even watching it in like 2008 or so, whenever I finally watched whenever I finally watched the miniseries, the idea of a female president was still just kind of like we talked about it, but it
Yeah.
was always like oh, come on, will it happen? And
Yeah,
still,
exactly.
aha, in 2024 hasn't fucking happened.
So it happened.
And also just her realization that she is, when they approach her and they say, you're the president. Congratulations, or whatever. Obviously,
Well,
I'm
yeah,
paraphrasing greatly, and she just sits back and is like, "Okay, let's get to work."
yeah,
For anybody that says women are too emotional for this shit, fuck you.
yeah.
And this, I
She,
know this is a TV show, but
mhm,
also talk to me when you have met a woman who, like, any woman who just has like some shit handed to them that they did not expect or deserve and
mhm.
isn't immediately like, God damn it, all right, well, let's get to work then, I guess.
Yeah,
Been
dude.
doing this my whole life, been taking care of people my whole life. Better fucking just do it again now.
Yep, yep. No, that was so good because the way they did it, they just kind of like they just hand her like a transcript or some kind of communique that she
Yeah.
got back, and you can see her, she's just kind of shaking and like, and it's like, yeah, well, guess what? You're the president now. Couldn't imagine.
But she immediately just
She stepped into the
she
role.
takes charge, but not in like a I'm in charge now sort of way.
No.
It's very much like what needs to be done and I'm going to get it done. It's everything about it's almost it goes beyond that one scene, that one reveal that she's the president, right? And
Mhm,
it goes beyond even the miniseries. Obviously, we'll talk about that in future episodes, but
mhm.
in this particular moment, it just Mary McDonald, man, so good, so good. She handled it perfectly. No notes.
She does really good with quiet emotion,
Yeah.
right? Like that's the thing. Like she doesn't
Yep.
have to tell you what she's feeling. You know what she's feeling just by the way she's acting, you know? And I think
Mhm.
that's where, picking her for that role was just amazing because it wasn't forced. Everything seemed so natural with what she was doing. It made it great.
Yeah, and now we're gonna move on from having maybe not so much emotion to all the emotion because our number 5 moment that made it is obviously, of course, Adama's speech.
Oh yeah.
Now, I'm gonna just kick this off with personally, I have to say this is like minus the fact that he lies about knowing where Earth is. I totally get why he does that, but I still hate that he does it. I
Mhm.
get why he does it. That doesn't mean I have to like it.
Yeah.
But also every other part of that speech is so, I mean, the whole speech itself, even despite the lie, is so powerful. And I think
Mhm.
you could even if he hadn't said anything about Earth, that doesn't make the rest of the speech any less powerful. And oh my God, that's so say we all chant. It's just chill. Like I have chills literally right now just mentioning it. Okay? Like that's how fucking good it is. I don't It's very rare that a show has made me feel that way from the same scene over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So fucking good.
So say we all, man. That
Yeah.
was great. Look, did he lie about it? Yeah, he did. Is it right? No, I guess not. But when you have a bunch of people that have given up hope and he's trying to give these people hope just to give them a fighting chance in life, that's just called necessary evil, is what it is, And Commander Dumb is one of those people.
I
He's
mean, I wouldn't call it evil either.
not evil. No, not evil.
It's a necessary fib. A white
Fib,
lie, if you will,
a white lie. I mean, really,
maybe.
there's such things as white lies or white lies when it comes to, I don't know, 48,000 people left in your
Yeah.
civilization and you're trying to get to the next planet,
Oof.
like I'm pretty sure that's probably gonna be the least of everyone's probably certainly the least of his worries. His worry now is like, dude, I gotta find Earth now. I hope it's not a legend because I gotta find it. But yeah, the speech was fantastic. The little trivia tidbit on it is that the majority of it is actually improved by him, which I thought was fantastic. Because yeah, it does. When the lady or the cleric or the priest is like, so say we all, and everyone's like, "Hmm, so say we all." And you see the way he looks at everybody, like
Yeah.
got that face, and he starts like repeating it over and over again. I was like, dude, pumped. Look, I always had a soft spot for Edward James almost because I always felt like I kind of looked like a younger version of him. That's why all my costumes is wanted to been of things that he does. He's just one of those actors that has been in so many movies since I was, growing up.
Mhm.
And
And is
so,
also just like a really lovely human being in
yeah,
person too.
he's just a lovely human being. So it's like anything that he does, and a matter of fact, that was one of the main pulls that got me to watch this to begin with, was the fact that he was in it. Because I liked Battlestar, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll check that out. When I saw he was in it, I was like, oh, I'm watching it. Like, forget about it, and I was pumped and I was ready for it. And I think I waited like a few weeks. I think I had heard about it probably like a month or two, like before the show actually came out. And I was pumped. I was like, this is what I'm doing this night. Nobody's gonna call me. There's a blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I was in it.
Okay. So now we're going to talk about some insights that we've gleaned from being longtime fans. And only for our Battlestar episodes, I am at least going to refer to any Easter eggs or bloopers that I've mentioned as Dean sites. That's DEANSIGHTS. Because my partner Dean knows far more about this than I ever could, despite how many times I've watched it. And he will not stop pointing things out to me, which means I have long ago lost track of what I knew before I knew him.
Mhm.
So my Dean sites for this episode are they never shoot rifles in the miniseries. And he also swears that the only gun that is shot, I think he means like not ever in the miniseries, but not ever in the entire series, but in the miniseries, the only gun that is shot is when Hilo shoots the one guy off the transport when they're trying to leave New Caprica.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there was no rifle shooting. It was just like a sidearm. That was it.
Yeah. I don't know. It's not something that matters. Let's be real. It's just a little trivia piece. Also, blooper alert, the Galactica's pods are pulled in for their FTL jump to Ragnar. Like they show the Galactica's pods being pulled in, but then when they show the jump, the pods are still out. And this is for sure not a thing that I personally ever would have noticed. This is definitely something he pointed out to me. So just a fun blooper thing. I know that I've got a lot of friends who are like huge into BSG who probably already noticed this, but this is not something I ever would have paid attention to. I'm more of like a character or like plot hole person than I am here's a random thing where like the pods were pulled in and then they weren't.
What's funny is that to this day, I didn't even know that. When I read this right now, I was like, oh shit, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I said I didn't even think. I feel like they kind of gave up on the pods coming in and out throughout the show. They were just like,
maybe,
nah, I felt like it wasn't like discussed as much anymore, and then I think they do it a little bit in the first few seasons, and after that, it was just like, nah. I just figured maybe they broke.
Well, and I know like with this particular scene, there's a whole thing where Starbuck is running late trying to get in, but I just assumed they were trying to close the doors. I totally, it went over my head that they were actually retracting the entire like pods where they, where the Vipers land. I just thought there were doors that were closing. Like I'm in Star Wars mind. Okay. Sorry, not sorry, but yeah. So, the more personal level insights I wanted to make note of are that one, Hilo is amazing. That is all. That's not all. Hilo is amazing. There are later things that happen with him. Listen, there's practically no character in this series is entirely good, right? No. Everybody has their gray areas. Either they're bad or they're gray. And there's like the lighter gray, the middle gray, the darker gray. I would say Hilo is the lightest of the light gray.
He is. Generally. Everybody gets their hands dirty in this one.
And we're not talking about like the characters that find out they're Cylons later. Okay. I'm just saying Hilo, he's very just honorable. The fact that they go back to New Caprica and he gives up his seat on the transport because he's like, listen, I'm just some military dude. Here's Gaius Baltar, who is like one of the greatest minds of our time.
Mhm.
Blech.
Well.
I love James Callis so much.
He's good.
Like
I
he's
love
so
him.
fucking amazing in this role, but
Yeah.
also
Yeah, exactly.
but Hilo, just saying like this is one of the greatest minds of our time. Like this is the person who should be saved, not me, some just like military schmuck, whatever. Um, he's particularly earlier in the series, he is so pure
He is.
and I love it. Um,
There was multiple times when I was watching him where I literally was like, "Oh, God bless his heart." Like
and
look
I'll
at him.
be completely honest. This is something that probably makes more sense bringing up later, but I might as well bring it up now because later we're going to have to be covering a lot more episodes, usually in like a shorter amount of time. But
Mhm.
Dean has a thing for Grace Park.
Oh yeah.
He's
She's
always
beautiful.
had a thing for Grace Park. I've always had a thing for Tom Pennicott.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, oh well, maybe we were meant for each
Yeah, I think the woman that I was the most like attracted to out of this entire series was D. I
other.
don't know what her real name is. Cassidy something. I can't remember what her name is.
Oh yeah, I'm blanking. She's not really in the miniseries.
Not that much. No, she plays a bigger part as the series like progresses. But oh man, she is
Yeah,
so pretty. Like she is so
no, she is.
beautiful.
Yeah. Um, but I do want to say I do have like a number two that's just very silly. But how do I want to do this? No, I'll bring this up in a minute. My number two insight is very silly. It's something that I'm sure people will kind of be like, "Meh, whatever, Tara," about, but the non-military costumes, and I'm not just talking about the miniseries, I'm talking about the series as a whole, but obviously this is the
Hmm.
first thing, and this is probably the one where we see where we first see the two things that I'm about to talk about. The non-military costumes are often so bad in this
Oh yeah.
series.
Oh yeah.
I'm looking at you. Six's fucking awful red dress. I'm sorry, that dress is not sexy. I don't know who thought it was sexy. It looks good on Six,
Yep.
but that is not like that is a dress that looks good on like negative 1% of the people in this world. That's not true. That's a dress that looks good on like 0.000000000000001% of the people in
I
this
think
world.
personally it would look great on me. I'm just saying. I think
Yeah,
that it would look
well,
fantastic on me, but I guess we're just gonna have to have
it's just it's
differences of
just a
opinions on this.
it's just a fucking hideously weird cut. Like the
It's
length is weird.
mhm.
The straps are weird. Like
Everything is off about it. It almost seems like it doesn't fit her, like it's like smaller almost, like
I
where
mean,
it's
it looks
like
good on her,
yeah,
but like
it is cut weird though.
but it still doesn't like when I say it looks good on her, let me tell you, she is a gorgeous woman, and about
Yeah.
a billion things would look better on her. And
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't, whatever, some dude designed this dress, is how it feels to me. And I could be wrong about that, but I don't like it. Um, However, also the fucking hideous blue suit that number
Oh,
five, the reporter guy, the
yeah.
number five style on the reporter guy wears, it is like he they bought that off the cheap rack at like fucking Walmart
Yep.
or something. It is so bad. It doesn't fit.
No.
Like I think the buttons are actually covered with cloth like it's the 70s. Were they trying to evoke the original Battlestar? I don't know. It's bad.
I feel like they might have, because you're absolutely right about this. This is another thing that I never thought about, but when I saw it, I was like, you know what? I was like, damn, it's absolutely right. Because everyone who's dressed in civilian clothing is just god awful. Like it looks terrible. Like this is the future. You guys designed great uniforms. Anything that's a uniform looks fantastic. Did you guys not maybe use some of that knowledge to just make street clothes that doesn't look like that? You know, it's terrible.
Yeah, it was just bad. It was bad. All right. What about your insights?
Shit. Okay. So there's like a few. See, I don't know. Let me see. let's just do for my insights. Let's just the things that really stuck to me. Well, no, because one of the next things we're going to talk about is about stuff that stuck to me. I don't know what my insights are. I was not prepared for this part. Okay, so
I put all of your notes here.
I know I'm just trying to like put them in my head. Okay, let's just go ahead. Okay, you're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. Sorry, been a long day. Anyways, um, one thing I like about this that really made me realize what it is that I loved so much about House of the Dragon, right, is that the writers are here not to waste your time, right? So there's scenes in this that were like the most emotional things that were the most little things. So like number one, going back to like Hilo, right? Hilo gives up his seat and he's going away, and the camera angle they're using because it's focusing in on the cockpit, of the Raptor or whatever, and it's kind of looking out the window, and you see the way Boomer's like saying goodbye to Hilo, and you can tell she's crying and she's trying to like hold her shit together. I thought that was extremely touching, and Hilo's just like limping away. He just shot this guy with whatever cyber bullet he shot that guy with, but that was a lot. I was like, yo, Hilo, man, calm down, dude.
Well, I mean, the transport needed to get, like, they were saving very few people.
No, absolutely. I would have done.
And they were already probably overweight. Like,
yeah, no. I definitely would have definitely have made that same decision. But the fact that there's like little things in this show which are the things that like stick, and like you spoke about earlier about like, oh, when you figure out who the other Cylons are and all this kind of stuff, that was exciting in the sense of like mystery. Does that stick with me to this day? Not really. It doesn't. Like, it was cool at the time because there was like, I don't know, but there's specific scenes throughout this entire series that they just stick with me like forever, and I don't know what it is. One of them, well, actually, I got like three of them, really. We'll just start there because there's probably like 20 in this, but we'll just kind of keep it light. So,
well, when you mention like who the Cylons are too, one of the things we have not mentioned at all is the entire scene on Ragnar where Adama gets stuck with Leoben. And I mean, let's be real. It's basically sort of like it's like a drama thing. Like, they had to throw some action / drama in here, and that was one of the things they threw in here. I'm not saying it's not important. It does tell us about the Cylons, not just that Leoben is one, but also that they can't be around that like sort of radiation, et cetera, et cetera. But and Edward James almost gets a little bit of a fight scene. Bow, bow. But
I don't know about a fight scene as much as just turning that guy's head into mashed potatoes with the light, and it was like, oh man, like, dude, wash your hands, dude. Like, what?
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of these just little like things that they don't stand out to me because I as much as I know they're important to the series as a whole, I don't feel like they are the best parts of what we see in the miniseries. But also it is important in terms of, like you said, like seeing who the Cylons are and what they are.
And it was wild, because it was like, so the one scene that just really touches me was that one scene that we had spoke about earlier where Boomer's taking off and waving, at Hilo. Like, that was really touching, because it was like, man, that really sucks. And it was cool because there wasn't even like a romantic nature going on there.
No, not at that point at all.
No, it's just that they were like partners, and I was like, shit, man. It made me think about a coworker I used to work with when I finally had to say goodbye and I just never saw them again afterwards. Like, honestly, that's what I think about when I see that scene. It's kind of heartbreaking. And but yeah, going back to the good writing part, right? Like, the writers are not wasting your time. There is a scene in it where the president goes to visit these other ships that they need help and all this kind of stuff. And she goes and she meets this little girl, and it's like, oh, and she's, talking to this little girl and everything is like great, right? Excellent. Again, the writers building up the most things that you think are kind of obscure, but they're not. Like, they're kind of trying to do something here. And when they get back on the ship and they're like, we need to jump away, there's ships that don't have FTL drives. And that ship was one of them, So there's this amazing scene where the president is like, okay, we have to go. She knows, because Billy tells her, like, that little girl you met, she's on one of those ships. And she's just kind of like, thank you, like, whatever. So, and you can see her sitting in her ship, and the people in the cockpit, when you hear the voices from the other ships that can't jump, when they're like, just tell us where you're going, and then another person's like, I hope you burn in hell for this, and they like take, and you hear them saying, oh my God, there they are, all this stuff. And it shows the little girl, because you see all the missiles coming out from like all the Cylon Raiders, and you see the ships there. And and then it goes into the scene with the girl sitting right by the fountain where she was earlier, just playing with her doll. And you're just like, oh my God. And it just fades to white. It's like, see, you didn't have to show me that ship blowing up for it to be like a super, like just poignant scene, And to me, that was like, I don't know.
Well, and that goes back again to the theme of the series theme of sacrificing the few to save the many. And in this case, it's not a few, but it's the few compared to, we don't have the room for them on our ships. We don't have the, we don't have anything in place to take care of more people than we already have. We don't even have anything in place to take care of the people we need to take care of, sort of thing. Like it's dark and sad and
It is dark and it's sad, and it really gives you like a sense of hope, especially when when Commander Adama kind of turns it around and he's like, and like as you mentioned earlier, where it's like, I think it's time we start making babies, where it's like, okay, now it's about surviving, we need to take care of who we have. So one of my favorite things really in any Battlestar episodes of anything is when the Battlestar takes a defensive stance over the fleet, right? And you see it here on in Ragnar, right? Where it comes out and you see the ship doing that thing where it's just turning around like this as the ships are coming this way and they're jumping, and it's got it's firing, like solution, and it's just and also another thing, I guess I'm going on a tangent here now, but like the other thing is the maneuverability of the Vipers. Because you look at a Viper and you think like an airplane, like, oh, it's got to like, no, these things just float and they like turn around real quick and they do all this stuff. And I'm like,
there's no atmosphere, right?
They don't
obey atmospheric rules. But that also, like, it makes it difficult for them to do things too, in some cases. But yeah, no, it's one of the more scientifically I'm using that term very loosely, but I'm using that term very loosely, but it's one of the more scientifically correct things in any science fiction thing ever, that they don't just exist in space and can just hover there, like that. When they move, it's very fluid, and it has to be also, like, there's one random thing that is in the intro of, I don't know that they show it in the miniseries, so maybe I shouldn't talk about it, but it doesn't really matter. It's not like, it's neither here nor there. But when I first watched this series, it was with one of my significant others, and I'm still friends with him. And one of the things we always focused on was the spinny ship, where it was a ship that actually had a spinning
thing
wheel that gives it gravity, right? And all the other ships, they have gravity some other way. I don't know how. I don't think that they ever explain it, but the spinny ship, what that's for. It's to give it gravity. And actually they if you ever watch For All Mankind, there's some of that in For All Mankind too. But we always would watch the intro and like the spinny ship would be there. And it was like, it's the spinny ship.
It's the spinny ship. Anyway. But I think, somebody had said, some reviewer said this about that show many, many years ago that always stuck with me, where he's like, they don't fill your head up with all this like science fiction jargon, right? Even like if you look at their weaponry, that's all weapons that are available now. Like you can go to your store and buy one of those if you wanted to, right? Like there's nothing that is too futuristic or scientific like about it, right? Because the way he had said it was that, this isn't like a sci-fi drama. This is just a drama that happens to take place in space, you know? And I thought that was a really good kind of like analogy for it, because it's like, yeah, you're right. Because you don't get, because the point of the show is not that, oh, what makes the ship fly? You know, or how did this ship get their gravity, or how does this one get, what kind of fuel does it use? You know, nobody cares if people are trying to survive, you know, and it puts you
Well,
in
and the
there.
fact that they need that they need fuel,
Yeah, exactly. And they need things like,
which comes up later,
yeah.
obviously, which we'll I'm sure talk about. But the fact that they
Hmm.
need fuel, I mean, they go to Ragnar to get
Yep.
weapons and stuff, but later
Hmm.
they need fuel
Yep.
to make their FTL jumps, period. So it's not just like
Hmm.
this magic thing, like everybody can go faster than light no matter
Yep.
what.
Yep.
So it's more realistic than most sci-fi of its time or even of this time.
Even of
Yeah.
this time, honestly. I mean, just everything they did in this show, the slow burn. Obviously, I'm a big fan of that. Big fan of it now. You know, halfway through this show, I was kind of like, oh, when is something going to happen? And then once I kind of got into its entirety of it, I was like, there's no other way you could have started this show. Like that was great because it set everything up, you know, which was awesome. And really like that loss of hope, right? Like everything in this show is about that.
Mhm.
There's no hope. It's the end of everything. What can you do? You know, like literally nothing. And they do a really good job on making you get into that zone mentally, you know, while the show is playing out, you know, and you can understand. And I think that's probably why, as the show progresses, there's a lot of things that happen that you understand why it happens. You know, you
Yeah.
may not agree with it, but you're like, dude, everyone is nice and peaceful when it's like comfort and peacetime and you have everything handed to you, but when it's like survival, dude, everything is just out the door, you know, and
Yeah.
people are going to do exactly what they need to do to like survive, and this show really does a good job, and you know, kind of putting you there.
I mean, it's basically apocalyptic sci-fi.
Yeah. Yep.
So, um, there is that. It is, and it has it has that darkness to it, but it also has, like you said, that hope. I mean, we
Hmm.
end the episode or we end the mini series with Adama making this speech that's like, even if he's lying, I know where Earth is, because he knows he has to give everybody hope or else they
Hmm.
will just kind of like, not that shit doesn't kind of hit the fan in many different ways throughout this entire series, but
Hmm.
he needs to reel that shit in for a bit. So he does it by
Yep.
saying, even if it's a lie, hey, I know where Earth is. Let's go
Hmm.
find Earth.
Yep.
So say we all.
We all. Yep. Amen.
Ugh, man, so good. And I still to this day, I'll be honest, I don't think I even regret starting with 33 season,
Hmm.
like actual season 1, episode 1, because I think I was sucked into this way more than I would have been, because I've tried to get friends into this by
Hmm.
starting with the mini series and they were like, "Yeah, this is fine." And I'm like, but we just need to get through the miniseries and then we'll get into 33. Like we'll get into 33 and you'll see what I'm talking about,
Yeah,
right?
man. 33 is one of my favorite episodes out of the entire series. Like it was such a great way to kind of open up that entire show. We'll talk about that one later. So my viewing experience with the first season was actually really strange because apparently it had aired like on Sky One in the UK way before we got it. So
Rude.
yeah, by the time we were on episode one, I think they were at the end of the season already. So a friend of mine came over and he had the first two episodes recorded on VHS. Okay. So, and we watched it. I was like, and I was hooked. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Cause I didn't have SyFy at that time when the show came out. I had it for the mini series, or I was somewhere that had cable. When the show came out, I did it. So he had brought those. And then I wound up finding the actual downloads from Sky One and got the entire season. So while everybody was on season 3, I mean, Manny was having parties at his house where it's like, we're watching 4 episodes tonight, guys. And we would just have these parties and we were watching with me and like a bunch of my friends. We're watching 4 episodes at a time. By the time people were on episode 6, I was like, dude, we just finished season 1 and you have no idea what's coming.
Yep.
Oh man, good times, dude.
Yeah, and obviously we will have far more to say when we cover future seasons. We're gonna break this up as we see fit. We're
Yeah.
still kind of working on how we're gonna break it up, but All I know is that even though I watched at least all of season 1 before I watched the miniseries, I go back to this miniseries. It's still amazing television.
Yeah.
It's still, like you said, it's got that slow burn, but it also has plenty of action. It's got the Viper fights. It's
Hmm.
got the explosion
Hmm.
in the bulkheads where they have to like close off
Yep.
a bunch of Chief's crew. It's got, which is sad and dark,
Hmm.
but sets up so much of the way of the theming of the way this series goes.
Yep.
And it's got even the stuff on Ragnar where
Hmm.
and then shit at the very end, um
Oh yeah.
like they go somehow the Cylons show up on Ragnar to save this single Leoben for some
Hmm.
reason. I don't really know. Like maybe I'm missing something. I don't really know why they did that. Like he
No,
could
it
just
wasn't
he
Leoben. It was the other guy. It was the reporter guy
no
because
no no
they.
no it was Leoben. It was Leoben. The reporter guy is ugly blue suit guy.
Yeah, but they left him in the station at the end because remember Adama already killed Leoben at this point, and they ditched the other guy. Remember, he was like, "I'm not a Cylon. I'm not a
Oh,
Cylon," and then they ditched him. There is what happened, and then he kept saying he wasn't a Cylon. And when the door opens, you can see him all sweating and all like the radiation is taking effect, and then that's where the other Cylons walk into
for
the
some
room.
reason I think I might have I was rewatching random scenes from this, so I think I
Hmm.
this is me screwing up. Like I was rewatching random scenes earlier today, like to
Yeah,
just kind of clean up like our notes for this episode. So you're probably right.
yeah,
But either way, like they go back to save this like one Cylon,
the
which
one
they
Cylon.
didn't really need to save. We learn why later, but they do. But I feel like that whole scene of them going back there was just so that they could show Sharon slash
Sharon come up,
Boomer.
Boomer. Yeah, that was the whole point of that scene was just so Boomer can show up at the end, and everyone's like, and they
Oh
left it.
my god!
Yeah,
Except for Tara.
yeah, you knew already, but for the rest of us, we were like, oh
No,
my
I
god.
didn't know. That's the thing. That's the thing. I didn't know because
Oh,
I
you
watched
didn't know.
like the whole like I don't remember when Boomer is like revealed as a Cylon in the actual like TV episodes
Hmm.
series. But I did not know that she was a Cylon when any like everybody who watched the miniseries knew she was, but I
Hmm.
didn't know.
Yeah,
So, but yeah, that whole thing, I think you're right, was just a reason for or a way for them to reveal that Boomer was a Cylon,
was a
which
Cylon.
also I can't imagine. I mean, being in like your shoes and watching it live.
Watching it live. Yep,
Christ.
it was wild because there's watching it live was terrible also because there's episodes in like season 2 where there's kind of like a cliffhanger and that was like the middle point of the series. So think about this, how long we've been waiting for House of the Dragon, right, to come out. Like that's how much time you had to wait for the second half of a season on this show, and they always did it at this crazy like, you know what I'm saying? Like at this crazy moment, crazy cliffhanger. It's like, great, I'll find out what it is next year. But also that screwed me also with getting ahead on season 1. When I downloaded
Mm,
those things, I had to wait even longer than everybody else
yeah.
to watch that. So yeah,
Oh, I've been there
it
with Game of
sucks.
Thrones. There was at least one episode that got released like 2 weeks ahead of time. But also, I just have to highlight the fact that because we are doing this live, my
Mhm.
friend Jeff says, "Holy shit, Boomer was a villain. BSG was ahead of OK Boomer by decade."
By decades. I didn't think about that. That's really good. That is now what's going to be flying out of my mouth now when I'm watching the
No.
rest of the show. Like, okay, boomer.
Jeff, I love you.
That was good, Jeff. Real good.
All right. So, any last thoughts before we wrap up our first BSG
Oh my
episode?
God. No, but everybody better get ready because we're gonna have a lot to talk
Yeah.
about.
This is like we're just over an hour now, and let me tell anybody who is watching this live that normally when Manny and I record stuff, we go way longer. And also this was only like 3-ish hours of
Yeah.
BSG, it's very likely that our first episode, or sorry, not our first, our second episode is going to cover all of season 1, just because there's not really a good stopping point in season 1.
No, season 1 is a start to finish thing.
Yeah. Future seasons absolutely are going to be split up into much shorter, numbers of episodes. But yeah, so all right. As we close out the episode, just want to give a shout out to our Heroes tier patron, Tommy of the TKOK Podcast Network. Thank you so much for supporting us. And thank you for joining us for our first Media That Made Us episode on the BSG miniseries. For the most current news and updates about the series, make sure to follow make sure to follow at A Geek Saga on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Twitter. But also, please consider backing our Patreon at patreon.com/geeksaga_entertainment. Have a good night, guys. Bye.
Good night.